Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, those of you in the room and those of you watching online. I'm going to begin this evening's proceedings first by issuing a few housekeeping requirements. First, I would like to invite those of you in the far back to come and join us at the front. We're having a conversation. There aren't many of us, and there's no need for you to be so scattered. You can come up to the front, and dare I say, some of you have front seat faces. There's no need to hide. We want to also encourage you to put your mobile phones on silent. If you please, we would sincerely appreciate it. As I said, we are broadcasting live. Final housekeeping measure, we would like to ask you to please reserve your questions, burning though they may be, for the end of the panel discussion. This evening's session is brought to you by a number of players, led off first and foremost by the Barbados Meteorological Services. We are also partnering today with the Department of Emergency Management and the Department of Public Affairs. My name is Crystal Austin, and I will be your moderator this evening. It is my honor to introduce to you my esteemed panel of presenters who will help us to interrogate this topic of high winds, the risks, and its mitigation. Once again, let me say a special thank you to all of you who have taken time out of your very busy Sundays, relaxing Sundays, to join us for this very important session indeed. We are still in the throes of our hurricane season, which runs from June to November each year. And we are pleased that you have taken the opportunity we've presented here for you to consult with us, to have a conversation with us, to share with us, to ensure that as we move forward with any and all plans to implement hurricane preparedness systems and programs and strategies in Barbados, that we are not doing so simply in a top-down manner, but that we are working together as a nation. Allow me to introduce this evening's panel. To my immediate left, Mr. David Alleyne. He is here on behalf of the General Insurance Association of Barbados. And a little bit about Mr. Alleyne. He is certainly a very well-seasoned insurance industry practitioner with over 40 years of underwriting, claims management, risk management, reinsurance, administering business development, and marketing experience. He has participated in various senior roles in the industry, at the board level and at the executive level, advising on matters of corporate vision and regional strategy. His background includes being an associate of the Chartered Insurance Institute of the ACII in the UK. He's a chartered insurer with the Chartered Insurance Institute of the United Kingdom, an associate in reinsurance, the Insurance Institute of America and he has a Master's of Business Administration degree from the University of Durham in the UK. We will be drawing on his expertise today on this very important matter of high winds and the role of insurance. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Alleyne. Also with us this evening, we have Mr. Make sure I get the name right. Apologies, I believe the surname is Estwick.
Yes, please.
Yes, Umar Estwick, here on behalf of the Department of Emergency Management. We also have two esteemed meteorologists with us. Say that fast 5 times. Ms. Raquel Davis and Mr. Jonathan Allen, both of the Barbados Meteorological Services. We want to start off this evening's discussion by simplifying what we are discussing today as it relates to high winds. And I want to invite Mr. Allen, Jonathan, to give us a definition. When we talk about high winds, what are we referring to specifically? Because right now we have some very strong winds in here from the fans, but I know that's not what we're talking about today.
Okay, good evening, everyone. When we talk about high winds, we are talking about winds that could actually be a hazard to life or property. So not necessarily fan wind. Pardon?
Yeah, you may need to speak up.
So not necessarily the high winds of the fans right now, but high winds that could potentially blow off a roof or blow away your garbage can or cause any damage to the structure around your home, anything like that.
Wonderful. So we're looking essentially at winds that can cause damage or loss to life and property.
Essentially, yes.
Essentially. And certainly within the last few years, with the changes in our weather patterns and the increase in what we might consider extreme events, we have been forced as a nation to be more on our guard as it relates to these high winds as just defined. Can you, Ms. Davis, help us to appreciate the difference in the various categories of the storms that present these high winds to us as a nation? So we have language that is used such as storms, depressions, and hurricanes, and to many people, 6 is half dozen, but maybe you can give us a breakdown.
Sure. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming. So briefly to explain the differences when we use these, I would say, meteorological jargons: tropical storm, tropical depression, and even hurricanes. All are classified as tropical cyclones, just to put that out there. And obviously there is a range. So the first one you would get the development of a tropical depression, and those speeds range up to 33 knots. We classify knots in our office as our means of measuring the wind speeds. But obviously to relate to you, the general public, that 33 knots is actually about 65 kilometers per hour, and you can judge that by estimating the speed of your car. So the tropical depression, the speed ranges up to 33 knots, which is about 65 kilometers per hour. And after the tropical depression, you get the tropical storm. And tropical storms, they normally carry names. It follows the letters in the alphabet. Some letters are missed, but I wouldn't go into that right now. But the speed of the winds associated with a tropical storm range from obviously above 33 knots to about 64 knots or so, which calculates ranging to kilometers per hour, about 65 to about 120 kilometers per hour. So you can imagine the speed that a car is going at 120 kilometers per hour. And then lastly, we will have the hurricane, which obviously has different categories, which range from category 1 through category 5. But category 1 hurricane starts at about 64 knots, which is about the same 120 kilometers per hour, and obviously increasing from there. So with these 3 stages of development of these tropical cyclones, you would have, let's say, different types of damages you would expect from that. So with a tropical depression, you would probably just have some trees swaying vigorously in the winds. With a tropical storm, you would have debris actually flying around. You could actually get in the uprooting of some of those trees as well. And obviously with a hurricane, you have like full devastation. You have these trees being knocked down, power lines down, which can impact water outages as well.
Wonderful. So, is it safe to say that we can have extreme wind events outside of those types of weather activities that you just described?
Of course, because all of them have to do with scales. So like these hurricanes and these tropical cyclones that I'm speaking of, that is normally on a larger scale. But sometimes you have what we would call smaller scale or micro scale events that can cause high winds as well. Those obviously would be, tropical waves. You normally hear that as the synopsis, a tropical wave is affecting the island. Or sometimes you can hear that a shear line is affecting the island. And when we speak of shear lines, we just try to establish a feature so that the general public can understand, but there are mainly two types of shear lines. And in this case, with respect to winds, there is a speed shear line. So there's normally slower speeds ahead, and after the passage of this shear line, you can expect the speeds to increase. So after the system passes through, then you can expect an increase in these winds. Also, too, you can have microscale, like dust devils, developing along in any small area. It doesn't necessarily mean that because one farms in Bridgetown that is going to stretch all the way up to St. Thomas. These are actually small-scale features. And also, too, you can have high winds from what we would call in our office microbursts, which is basically associated with a cumuliform cloud. And you would have just this rush of air from the base of the cloud coming down to the land. So those are some of the things that can cause high winds on a smaller scale compared to what I was discussing earlier about the tropical cyclones, which are large scale.
So, explain to the public how some systems may end up with an impact that is more wind than rain.
Okay, with the impact of more wind than rain, it all depends on the environmental conditions in which this system or the tropical cyclone, or as I said, the same system is basically thriving in or traversing Barbados, the landmass, and our coastal waters. So sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Is it possible for us to have a system or for a system to exist that generates more wind in terms of the impact than rain?
Yes, right. So sorry, was getting a little sidetracked there. Forgive me.
I know you all are very passionate about this subject, but I want you to help me to break it down for the average Jane and Joe.
Yes, please. Try my best. So as I mentioned initially, it all depends on the environment that this system is thriving in. So some systems can thrive in an atmosphere which is very moist, which is going up from the lower levels straight up to the upper levels of the atmosphere. So if it's in a moist environment, then we can expect it to be a lot of rain. But if it's in a more drier atmosphere, you expect it to be obviously not much rain, but you will still get the effects of wind from that system.
So not to put you under additional pressure, but I just wanted to find out, with respect to this heat, that you could compare to some really far out places nowadays. Is it perhaps more likely that with these extreme temperatures that we are experiencing, that we would have more events that are wind related, or it is a half dozen, as I like to say? Is it that we would still have a lot of rain in these conditions where it's so hot, or is it because of the heat that the systems then would generate more wind than rain?
I would say is a toss-up.
So outside is really hot nowadays.
Yes,
does that mean
really
that we will
hot.
have a lot more wind events than rain, or vice versa?
I would say not necessarily. To me, with the heat, and I don't know if my colleague will agree, but with the heat, it actually is a driving force for the development of the systems. And I don't know if you want to add anything.
Feel free to jump in, Mr. Ali.
What I will say is the heat that we are experiencing right now, for the last about month or two, a lot of that heat was attributed to the systems in the Atlantic breaking down the flow of the high pressure system. So you have a situation where you can imagine if you were at home and you turn off your fan, you will feel the heat a lot more, right? That's essentially what's happening right now in the Atlantic. The systems are breaking down the flow of the high, which is comparable to your fan being on. So when those systems come across the Atlantic, interrupting that flow, then you feel the heat a lot more.
Right. Because it feels like, to the average person, I don't know about the audience, but it feels like if the systems are pulling everything out of our atmosphere and just leaving it very still and humid and unbearable.
That is essentially what is happening.
But is that then a setup for us to experience more extreme events?
In the near future, I'm going to say no, because that heat that we're feeling, that may contribute to localized events, being that the rains are so light, you might find rain falling over one section of the island versus the other. But in terms of more significant or more, what was the word that you used?
Extreme?
Extreme events right now, I would say no.
Okay. So I would have had the privilege of doing a tour of your facilities at Charnox, and I was very fascinated by the 3D printing effort that is being undertaken by the Barbados Meteorological Society to disseminate different weather equipment. Rather than import it, you're actually producing it and installing them around the island to ensure that you're able to get more. Well, you tell us what you're doing with all this 3D printing and the equipment that you're installing around the island and how it's helpful to us.
Okay, so the 3D printing equipment that we're distributing around the island is basically a weather station, an automatic weather station. What it's doing is it's gathering weather information in terms of the rainfall amounts, the wind speed, the temperature, wind direction, basically all the weather parameters that we would need in the office. And it's basically allowing us to see how conditions vary across the island. And we're also going to be using it for climatic purposes. Over the last, well, basically the database right now at the Barbados Meteorological Services is primarily for the station itself. So what that means is all the data was collected for the meteorological services area, right? But the weather stations right now are going to give us a better idea of how weather conditions actually vary across the entire island.
So before, when we heard the news, you would hear the rainfall at the airport. And I know for people in St. Andrew or people in different parts of the island on the west coast, we often would say, well, we didn't have any rain, or the rain was pouring down by us, and you would say there was no rain at the airport. Are these weather systems, as you're calling them, allowing you to be able to be more specific and give a wider range of weather reports for us?
Yes, I would say so. The stations themselves are placed across the island, different sections of the island. So then we have a better idea of basically if the rain was if there was supposed to be rainfall in, let's say, Charnox, but not any in St. Lucie, we would know, well, that system didn't affect the entire island the same way. Right? Some sections of the island are actually going to receive less rainfall. Some sections of the island are going to receive more rainfall. So basically that's all
Sorry to cross you. How many of them have you installed so far?
Off the top of my head, I know the last count was 60.
About 60?
About 60.
Okay. Sorry, continue.
That was it.
Okay. So we have about 60, what is the correct term? Weather stations?
Automatic weather stations.
Automatic weather stations. And just to repeat, the Barbados Meteorological Services have 3D printers. They are actually creating these automatic weather systems and installing them across the island to enable us to be able to track how the weather is affecting us across the entirety of Barbados. And I think they should be lauded for that, because certainly it is a step in the right direction. I want to move now to our colleagues from the Department District.
Emergency organization.
From the District Emergency Organizations, yes, which is a group administered by the Department of Emergency Management, and they are largely volunteers. If none of you in here have ever explored joining the DEO in your area, I would highly encourage you to do so. But Mr. Eswick, can you give us some idea of the vital role that the DEOs play?
Thank you, everyone, for inviting us. And I just want to say from those first couple of questions, I feel even more smart and safer with what the Met Office is doing already. I want to say thank you very much. So the DEO, we are, as you said, a voluntary organization. There are 30 of us around the island, similar to the constituencies. And we provide assistance to, during the hurricanes, well, any matter, because we can also help the police officers if there are any accidents and stuff like that. We also assist with that. But the DEOs, we are here as a voluntary organization to provide assistance wherever required during the hurricane or event. So we have various persons who would do road clearing, they would do tree trimming, they would do first aid, they would do shelter management. So there are lots of areas that we cover within the DEO.
And certainly the membership is open and available to all Barbadians.
To all.
Wonderful.
The
And
more,
as-
the merrier.
And we certainly have some DEOs, I know for a fact, that are very much undersubscribed. And we would like to encourage you again, those of you who are watching and listening, to explore the option of joining the DEO in your area. I would imagine that the seriousness with which you have to approach the duties of a DEO require much training. Can you tell me about the types of training that is available? Let's say, for example, I'm watching right now, I'm at home, I have a pickup truck, I don't really use it that much anymore, kind of semi-retired, and I'm thinking maybe I can get involved and help move some of these trees to clear the roads. What are some of the training opportunities that I might get so that I feel more competent in being a part of the DEO?
Sure, there are lots of training available. The first one that everybody would normally run to would be first aid. This would be the normal first aid that you can get from like the Red Cross, but that's also offered by the DEO through the various constituencies. There's also chainsaw, that's done by Mr. Brooks. So that gives you the ability to be able to use a chainsaw to remove trees, to, even if it's a power line, for example, not say you would cut a power line, but let's say the wood is an issue and stuff like that. We also have training for road clearance. We also have training for just so many different things. Using the radios as well, communications. Yes, that's a big one for us right now with regards to communications, because similar to how the Met Office would like to have the information from the 60 automatic weather stations that are available, we would like to be able to get in contact with everyone across the country to understand what's happening with them so the DEM can then use the resources better. The other ones would be, I think those are the major ones. There are some more, but they're not coming to me right now.
Suffice it to say, there's a lot.
A lot.
A lot of training that you can obtain.
Yes.
And ultimately make life better for you and your neighbors
Yes.
in the event of a storm. What are some of the damages or impacts that you have seen in your line of work as a result of high winds?
Okay. So the St. Philip West DEO has primarily seen structural damage specifically to roofs and other timber/wooden panels the size of homes or on timber wooden homes. These damages were mostly as a result of the home being unsecured or unstable prior to the disaster event, other older residences which need repair, new buildings which were poorly constructed. For example, there was no use of hurricane straps or shoddy work, sometimes unknown to the homeowners, or homeowners trying to save on building materials. Neglect to maintenance, making the occupants and the home more vulnerable. It was observed that the wooden structures with multiple impacts without adequate repairs are at the highest risk to the high winds.
Can you repeat that part, please?
It was observed that the older timber houses with multiple impacts without adequate repairs are at the highest risk to the high winds.
So the traditional chattel house
Yes.
that might have been affected by the freak storm and Elsa, and still in a
Yes.
state of disrepair, or those damages haven't not yet been fixed. Those are the ones at the highest risk.
Yes.
Okay.
And just to give some statistics, in 2021, with the passing of Tropical Storm Elsa, the St. Philip West DEO assessed 52 houses which were severely affected by high winds. About 40%, or 21 houses, completely lost their roofs, while 29% had partial damage to their roofs. 11 houses were completely destroyed, making them uninhabitable, whilst the remaining 10% saw partial damage to the structure of their homes.
So I have a two-part question for you.
Sure.
What is the role of the DEO in helping to alert these persons in these very vulnerable homes that there's a storm approaching? Do you have a database, for example, that you work with, so you know Patsy in 2nd Avenue, we gotta go and talk to her? Is that how you approach it, to, in advance, alert these persons that their homes, relative to the potential high winds that could be impacted or impacting them during the upcoming storm, they need to evacuate, they need to get into a shelter? What is the role of the DEO in that exercise?
And that's a very good question. So we have a vulnerable persons list. So let me start with that one first. This would be the persons who will have some either ailment or disability. These would be the persons that we will seek out if we know that a storm, hurricane is coming. We will reach out to these persons first to let them know, hey, this is happening. It may be best for you to evacuate, or what are your plans that you have in store to ensure you are safe during the passing of the cyclone. With regards to the houses which may need to be repaired, yes, we do have a list. What the DEO would do, we will go and do an assessment in the various areas and identify those individuals and those houses which will be of high risk. And for those houses which will be of high risk, we will also reach out to those individuals and inform them, hey, this is what's happening. It might be best for you, based on what we are hearing now, how this is developing, to look for alternative shelter.
So folks, again, an appeal to join the DEO, because in each constituency, correct me if I'm wrong, there are about 10,000 households, and the DEO needs to be able to examine all 10,000 and make a good database with which to be able to help save lives. So if you are able and willing, we want to encourage you to join. The second half of my question is, what percentage of these people that you go to warn would you say refuse to leave the house? And I want you to be as graphic as you can be in terms of these houses that end up being a pack of cards. Are we having to then helping to pull John and Janice from under these houses because they refuse to listen? I want to hear more details about that.
Well, thank goodness I haven't have to pull anybody from other house. But what I would say is majority of the people don't want to leave. They don't want to go into a shelter. I guess a shelter has some kind of a negative connotation to a lot of individuals in Barbados. But even when we speak to, even after the passing and there's damage to the house, they still don't want to leave.
Why is that?
I don't know. When we get to those individuals, we pass on the information, and because there's nothing else we can do, and we have to move on to do more assessment to check and see who else is damaged. If they don't want to leave, we try our best, but then we have to move on.
And it's very sad.
Yes, it is. Especially any houses with children in them.
Well, I would like to challenge all of you on the panel to do some research. I believe it's because I can't cook any rice or peas in the shelters. I think that's one of the reasons why people don't want to leave their homes. Because when you go to shelter, it's just biscuit and tuna and sardine. But I could do all the things at my house. I can't even carry my little portable stove into the shelter. From what I understand, you could correct me if I'm wrong. When you go in the shelter, there are very limited things you can do. You can't carry Bob the dog. You can't cook the food. So perhaps those are some of the reasons, but that's conjecture. I would suggest maybe you can do some research and see why these people have such pride in their homes that they would even put themselves in danger.
Agreed.
Awesome. So we're looking, for those of you who just joined us, at high winds and the risks and its mitigation. On our panel today, we have Mr. David Allen from the General Insurance Association of Barbados, representing the DEOs, District Emergency Organizations of Barbados, Mr. Omar Estwick, and representing our producers today, the Barbados Meteorological Services, we have Ms. Raquel Davis and Mr. Jonathan Allen. Coming on the heels of that discussion, where homeowners are tied to their homes, even in the face of danger, I would like to invite Mr. Allen Sr. to join the discussion and tell us about the role of insurance in general as it relates to high winds. Perhaps you might want to start with what insurance actually covers as it relates to that type of weather event.
Thanks, Crystal. Good afternoon, everyone. I think to put within context our discussion as it relates to insurance, it's good for me to explain from an industry perspective what insurance actually is. And we consider insurance to be what is called a risk transfer mechanism. What it allows homeowners to do, all of us that own assets, is to transfer the possibility of loss, financial loss, from the loss of those assets to the insurance company for a small premium, relatively small to the value of the home that you have. Why is that important? Because the majority of us, the two largest investments we have are going to make in our lives, our home, to house our family, or a vehicle. Two largest investments. And we spend every day working, accumulating that asset. And if we leave it to be damaged or destroyed by a natural hazard, then we have to start over again. I can't afford to do that. So I have to buy insurance, and that's what insurance is for. The average homeowner can negotiate with his insurance company for a homeowner's policy, and that homeowner's policy is going to cover you against fire, firstly, but then all the natural perils that surround us: hurricane, earthquake, flooding, impact with flying objects, many things. There are also some additional aspects that can be added on. But essentially, a homeowner's policy would cover you fully against damage or destruction from a natural hazard.
Appreciate your response. So, when you were describing the premium just now, you gave the impression that it was very affordable. But I am sure that a lot of these persons with these very vulnerable homes are afraid to even start the discussion because they are perhaps pensioners or persons who have very low to average incomes. And how do you convince that person to try to eke out of what is already a small amount of money to protect this thing, which I don't think there's any dispute? The house is not something you want to have to start over again with, but convince us that it is important to at least have the discussion about insuring my little two-bedroom tiny house.
Crystal, the expenditure of money for something that most people feel is not necessary or that may not happen is a difficult thing to convince most people. I am not going to lose my house, because it is important for me to put that money aside and give to an insurance company to ensure that my family and I don't lose my home. The average premium, the insurance companies charge rates. The average rate for a homeowner's policy is somewhere around $4, $4.50, $4.5 per thousand of your sum insured. When you calculate that, it is not a lot of money compared to your home.
Can you repeat that, please?
The average rate in Barbados is somewhere around $4 to $4.50 per thousand of the value of your home. That can easily be calculated. $4 to $4.50, somewhere around there, depending on what the insurance company feels about the risk, on the value of your home by the thousand. Most insurance companies will allow you to pay that premium over a period of time, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, so that out of your monthly outlay, you can look for dividing it by 6 or 8 times and paying that amount to secure your premises.
Would you say that the Barbadian public, the homeowner public, has been consistent at a high level in getting and maintaining home insurance? Or would you say that because perhaps of the recent hard times a lot of persons have experienced due to inflation and so on, that there is a lessening in consistency of persons maintaining that home insurance?
I think that we, Barbados, have been lucky. We all know that God is a Bajan, as we say. That is not true, because we've had storms in the past, maybe not in the very recent past, but Mr. Eswick just talked about Elsa, Thomas. Those caused damages to houses, significant in some ways. We've been lax and complacent because we've not had recent events. But all around us in the Caribbean, countries have had severe devastation from storms, and we are not immune from that. I think one of the things that not only the falling off or lapsing of insurance cover, but ensuring that the sum insured, the amount that you insure your property for, is at an adequate level. Because even if you have an insurance policy and you do not have the sum insured at the right level, you will not be properly covered against damage or loss. So it's important not only that you have insurance, but that you make sure that your sum insured, the value of your home insured, is at the right level for replacing the home.
So, for those who don't own a home yet, or maybe they're going through the process now of getting their mortgage approved to build their home, is it a case where I need to go back to my insurance company when I build on a deck at the back of my house and say I want to add to the sum insured, or is that mandatory?
Every time you belong something to the house, it increases the value of that house. So to make sure that you're properly covered, you must go back to the insurance company and say, I have done this with the house. The insurance company isn't necessarily too interested in what you've done, but to ensure that you're protecting yourself, you go back and say, my sum insured, I believe, is now $300,000 instead of $200,000. The reason that that is fundamentally important if you have an insurance policy is because if you have a home insured for $100,000, the house is actually worth $200,000. You've only insured it for $100,000. If the house is totally destroyed, you will get the $100,000 that you've insured. But your house is not worth $100,000; it's worth $200,000. So you are out of pocket for the other $100,000. It's gone. That's in a total loss situation. Where the house is partially damaged, in the same scenario, you have $100,000 insured, the house is worth $200,000. You have damage to the house that occurred, your roof went. The roof cost $50,000 to repair. Your claim will be reduced by 50%. The same percentage that you are underinsured. Why? Because you've not transferred to the insurance company the full amount that you are exposed to. So your sum insured must be at an adequate level. If not, there will be a reduction.
So I have two questions for you, and then I'll go back to the others so that we engage everyone. The first question is in relation to what you just said. If I come to you now in the heat and the heart of hurricane season, will I be penalized, or is it better for me to wait till after November when the hurricane season is over so that my premium would not be so unbearable? Or does it even matter?
It doesn't matter. Your premium will be the same. You're insured now, you're insured for 12 months. From whatever date you come to the insurance company till a year later, that's an annual premium. It doesn't vary.
Right.
Depending on if it's in hurricane season or not.
So folks, if you're a homeowner or you're about to be a homeowner and you are looking at doing more than what you originally planned for your house with those augmentations, you are strongly encouraged to increase your insurance coverage to match the new value of your property so that in the event of high winds that damage your home, your claim can cover the damage. How long does it take claims to clear on average? And perhaps you can phrase it within the context of what is the international standard versus what our standard is in Barbados.
That's a difficult question. I'm not saying that from an insurance perspective, as if insurance companies delay claims, but it really depends on what has been damaged, the complexity of what has to be done, the loss adjusters report. If there was a loss and somebody came to an insurance company providing an estimate for repair and the adjuster agreed with the estimate, there's no reason that claim would not be paid within a week or a week and a half, 2 weeks. There's no reason why it couldn't be paid. What sometimes happens, though, is that the assessment for rebuilding, not through the insurance company's perspective, but through getting information relative to rebuilding, takes a little more time. But as long as the insurance company and its adjusters agree with the value, the claim will be paid almost immediately.
And to strengthen your point, perhaps the time that it would take for your insurance company to respond and provide you with your claim amount, it's still probably faster than if you wait on the state, having not taken care of your insurance, to get that support to be able to have your home repaired. Not to say that housing is not working as fast as they can, but ideally you want to have insurance so you remain in control of your own affairs. Is that not right?
Absolutely. The insurance company's obligation is to satisfy you for the premium you pay. That's an absolute obligation of the insurance company. The state is trying to help. There's no obligation of the state, and it depends on the state's finances. If there is a significant occurrence in Barbados, we had 2 small storms and it caused a lot of confusion. Those are minuscule storms. If we have a proper impact of a category 3 or 4 storm, there is going to be significant destruction. For government to help everybody, I don't actually know and think it's possible.
Agreed. That being said, though, I must commend the DEM for the work that they're currently doing to install hurricane straps on the homes of several persons whose properties are very vulnerable, and that installation project will give those persons a little bit more reassurance in the possibility of weathering any of those storms should they happen. But ideally, we would want to encourage persons, especially if you know that you have the wherewithal to do so comfortably, to engage your insurance companies, have those conversations, and make sure that you have some kind of coverage in place. It goes a long way to ensuring that we as a nation can rebound from these extreme weather events. I want to talk to our colleagues at the Barbados Meteorological Services about the alerts that they send out. And I will leave this open to either Raquel or Mr. Aline to respond. Help us to understand the alerts. I understand you've shifted to an impact-based system. Can you give us citizens an understanding of what this means?
Okay, so the impact-based system forecast is moving away from just what the weather is to what will it be, basically what the weather will do and what you should do in response to the weather. That's the system that was implemented about 2 to 3 years ago, roughly speaking, and it's basically just a better way of getting the public to understand how to handle the forecast and the weather events that we get across the island.
Right, because I believe in recent times, I don't know about those of you who use social media and so on, but I've noticed in your captions when you post the updates, you would say things like, this type of wind could have this type of effect, this type of flooding could have this type of effect, and it gives you a more picturesque view of what to expect. Is this what you're referring to with respect to the impact-based system?
That's exactly what we're referring to. You should also note that every forecast that we issue is color-coded. So we go along the scale from green, yellow, orange, and red. Basically, your green forecast would be no action forecast. Your yellow forecast are forecasts that you need to be aware of. Something might happen. Pay attention to that forecast. The orange and red forecasts that we issue are basically our watches and warnings. So when there's an event significant enough to warrant a watch or warning, that would be orange or red, versus when the forecast is just something that you need to be aware of, or information, maybe a slight tweak to what's going on, or a slight change to the actual information or the other event, or what we are normally accustomed to, does your yellow forecast.
With respect to these alerts and after hours notifications, how effective are they, and what is the plan perhaps to make sure they're more effective? For example, a lot of people slept through the freak storm because it was in the dead of night. Others who are light sleepers would have gotten up and realized it, but in terms of notifying people that these things are happening outside of the usual waking hours, how is the Barbados Met Services working towards giving Bajans the information in a timely manner?
Well, I can say that there are already systems in place in terms of the cap app. There is also the BMS Insight app. Outside of the two of those, there is all of our social media pages, and there is also the BMS website, barbadosweather.org. So whenever we publish a forecast or any information that we have, any significant information, that is, it will go to the cap app and the BMS Insight app, which is something that you have on your phones, which with that approach, basically everyone that has the application is able to get the alerts in a timely fashion. Outside of the two of those, then any of our social media pages or our website will have the relevant information.
I've also noticed that you are producing WhatsApp videos, for lack of a better phrase, and these videos are being circulated in different groups. Most of these groups, I would imagine, are people like DO affiliated, constituency affiliated, or weather fanatics. But would you say that Barbadians at large are responding to these videos, and certainly how do they know that these videos are really authentic? Because we have a lot of people out there trying to become social media mavens and influencers, pushing information, and how do we know that this information is really the right information?
I would say that they are responding to the videos well. At the present moment, there are certain faces that we definitely know when it comes to the videos.
Like Sabu.
So, yeah, essentially, like Sabu. So you definitely know, well, when you see his face, it's an authentic video. But if it were any of the other meteorologists in the office or any other person from the Barbados Met office, you would either see a name tag or an official Barbados Meteorological Services shirt, like what Raquel is wearing, or something that says this person is definitely from the Met office.
Would you say that there's a lot of mischief in the weather space in Barbados where people put out messages, they're not BMS affiliated, they're not DM, but they are fanatics, or for lack of a better word, persons who are very passionate about weather? Do we have a situation where we have a lot of that taking place, or no?
I wouldn't say there's a lot of mischief. I would more say it's a case of people are more aware of what's going on, and that's a good thing. And so from being aware, they tend to ask more questions, and that, in my opinion, is a great thing.
And that's why we have forums like this, so that persons can have their questions answered in a legitimate and approved fashion. Raquel, can you give us some of the types of advisories that the Met Office would issue to Barbadians as it relates to the wind-related events? I believe this is back to the same color-coded system that you're implementing.
Yes, so with the wind alerts, as my colleague mentioned, we have the colors, and that's the basis for our forecast. So normally when you see green with respect to wind, that's no action. When you see be aware, which is very seldom, but when you do see it, we're asking you to be aware of the situation, actually pay attention to what the speeds of the winds would be. And normally in this case, it would just be like a general forecast, and we would translate it from what I was explaining earlier, from the knots to the kilometers per hour, so that the general public can understand. And normally with the wind alerts, when you see them orange or red, it's normally tied to the same systems that I would have mentioned earlier, the tropical cyclones. And those would be obviously a tropical storm watch or warning, or hurricane watch or warning.
Are the alerts different for seafarers? They're fishermen and persons in that field. Do they get a different type of alert than those of us on land?
At this time, no, but we are looking to change that in a very near future, because we have done an outreach program with the marine users and persons that basically use our marine waters, even the people at the ports, and we understand the need for them to have their own specialized forecast. So we are looking to work on that in the near future.
Okay, and still with you, but back to the social media atmosphere as it relates to the weather discussion. I believe recently there was a video about a tornado that may have appeared to be forming in Barbados. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. And it's funny that you call it a tornado, because to actually clarify, it was actually a water spout, because it was over the ocean. It did not make what we would call landfall. So in that case, it's call a water spout. But just to go from what you're saying, yes, there are the possibility of tornadoes. And normally, too, we will also see what we would call dust devils. I believe there was a video about one of them a couple of years ago, which actually occurred on the beach. And with these things that I'm talking about, these dust devils, obviously tornadoes and water spout, they have different formations. Normally, with the dust devil, you can see that forming from the ground up, and with the water spout, you can normally see that coming down from the cloud, which we will call a funnel cloud once it doesn't touch the surface of the ocean. And then obviously if it does touch the surface of the ocean, then it will be called a water spout. But the general basis behind these features is that there is, obviously is driven by the wind, and you would have some turning, or for lack of a better word, like a whirlwind. And you would just see that turning. They're normally very short-lived, and they are not very frequent. You normally see them around this time of the year, during the hurricane season, more so than any other time of the year.
So all of us have smartphones. 9 out of 10, if I see one of those, I take out my phone. What really should I be doing if I see something like that happening? What should be my immediate response?
Well, I would say you can check our social media pages. If it is something very serious, we would try to post it on there. Or even more serious than that, you can check to see if we have any updates to our forecast. Once you don't see anything of the sort, you can just give us a call at the office, and we could basically give you a brief explanation over the phone of what the feature is actually called and if there are any reasons to be concerned.
Right, so by and large then, within the context of Barbados, when those types of whirlwinds, as you refer to them, occur, they're not necessarily of the mammoth scale like we would see in the movies. It's not necessarily something for us to really panic about. And if there was something serious, the Met Office would have issued an alert to Barbadians.
Correct, most definitely. But I would also like to mention here, even the one that I mentioned that occurred on the beach, is very important to, obviously, if you see something like that occurring, obviously to, move to an area of safety, because these features can actually cause damages to property and even life, because it can uproot certain, like at this instance on the beach, it started to move beach chairs and beach umbrellas, which can be harmful once just being tossed around, and persons in close proximity to those things.
So if you're outdoors and you see an event like that, the ideal scenario is to get indoors.
Correct, yes.
And if you're indoors and something like that is happening, where in the house should you be?
If it occurs, and well, it will have to be on a very large scale, and we have never seen such in Barbados. But I would say go to the safest part of the house, and I know maybe my DO colleague can echo me on this, but I believe that would be the bathroom, because most structures, especially in Barbados, the bathrooms are of concrete structure, even in the wooden homes. So the bathroom would be the safest place to go.
Mr. Aswit, do you agree?
Yes.
We are not allowing one-word answers, by the way, but I'll let you get away with that one.
Yes, please.
Oh my goodness. So we are back with you, Mr. Aswit, with respect to the role of the district emergency organizations. And I want to ask you, who do I contact if my home is damaged by wind or a wind-related system? Who's the first person I should call with respect to a situation like that occurring and affecting my home?
Normally when these systems impact telecommunications, it's going to be down. That's one of the first things that's going to go down. Even if they don't go down, the telecommunication services pull back the power to allow that if there are any impacts, it will reduce what it will hit. Normally, for us, we normally receive this information through word of mouth. But if you had to call someone, the most people in Barbados, to be very honest, call the radio stations. That's the truth. But if you can call the DEM, call the DEM. But we normally hear these things through word of mouth.
And usually, once an event like this takes place, the DEOs would have a strategy for going out and doing their assessments and so on.
Yes, that is correct. We actually had a exercise Eagle Eye, I think it was last year, where we would actually assemble here those from the St. Philip's West this DEO, where we had that exercise, and exercise would have put us through various activities for road clearance, for first aid, for all the different events that could occur during a hurricane. So yes, we do have plans in place for communications, for distribution of equipment, for the distribution of personnel.
Do they also teach you in the DEO how to advise homeowners in assessing their own vulnerabilities?
I would say yes, but as I'm not a part of the damage assessment team, I don't know exactly what is done in that area, but I would say yes.
Wonderful. So folks, when you see these DEO representatives in their lovely bright colored shirts, I believe each DEO has their own color shirt. Yes?
No.
Everyone is wearing blue now?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So when you see the assessors come into your home in these lovely teal or turquoise shirts, please make sure you welcome them and take on the information that they're sharing with you.
But I just want to add just to what I was saying. So we do encourage the homeowners and the occupants to observe and look out for a couple of different things. Those will be damaged utility poles, open or damaged culverts, wells, drains, which may become concealed or covered with falling debris.
In the end, always chat with the Barbados Meteorological Services or any of our official pages. Thank you.
And to reinforce his comment, the Met Service is very timely in fielding its information to your official media houses, so your newspapers, your radio stations, the bona fide media are also given that information simultaneously, so you can rely on the coverage from your press houses as well with respect to these notifications. As was said earlier, a lot of people like to use the radio, and that is part of our culture in Barbados. You can rely on those notices coming from the official media houses, as well as the very active and creatively deployed social media of the Barbados Met Service. Ms. Davis.
Yes, please. Just to thank you guys for coming. Those who are online, thank you as well. And just to share from the BMS side, as Mr. Allen and I would have spoken about our impact-based forecasting, which we started in 2020. So we just want you to be aware of the colors that we use and our color scheme that we're trying to push so that the public can greater understand what the weather will do and what the hazard is and what your response should be. So paying attention to those colors, I would just like you guys to be mindful of that. The green, the yellow to be aware, the orange to be prepared, and the red to take action. Thank you.
Mr. Eswe.
Just want to say thank you again for having us, and just like to say some final words on the St. Philip West DEO. So St. Philip West DEO has been familiarizing itself with the communities within and the vulnerable persons and homes which may require assistance in disaster events to help us rapidly respond should a need require. The future state of the St. Philip West DEO is a more responsive DEO with increased membership numbers. We're looking to do more community profiling events. We're looking for a private sector collaboration with the aim of partnering on community activities both at the St. Philip West level and at the Zone 1 level. developing new relationships and strengthening existing bonds, having a sit-down and discussions with churches and community-based organizations as to get information related to hurricane preparedness across in a timely manner, and lastly, having at least 1 or 2 members of each home equipped with the knowledge of disaster preparedness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as a self-proclaimed youth advocate, I want to encourage all young, able-bodied persons, even if you're unemployed, to get involved in the DEO. It is a wonderful experience that you can put on your resume to catapult you into the world of work. So don't say they ain't paying, I ain't going. It's right there in your neighborhood. Chances are you don't have to spend any money to get there, but you're going with the mindset that you're learning skills that you can then leverage to build a career, to earn an income. Not through the DEO is volunteer, but the skills and the mindset can open you up to an interest in studying. What is it that they do at UWI? What's the name of the degree at UWI again? The Met Services degree?
Oh, there's the bachelor's in meteorology.
There's a bachelor's in meteorology at the university, and you may very well find yourself leaning towards a profession in the weather or climate field, for a better phrase. So this is an opportunity for you, a clarion call. We need more young people in the DEOs to step forward to ensure, most of all, that there's continuity and that these organizations can live on even as the more mature but young at heart members retire. We will continue to keep those roles filled and have the DEO out in the community supporting the vulnerable and making sure that we can bounce back quickly after an event. And our final speaker, Mr. Aline.
Thanks, Crystal. As a Barbadian, I just want to say thanks to the Met Office and to the Emergency Management, my fellow panelists, for the work they do for us as Barbadians. Is really appreciated. As an insurer, I'd like Barbadians to make sure that they mitigate as much as possible the effect of any storm that comes here, shutters, hurricane straps. Get Uncle to have a look. Hurricane straps can significantly reduce the effect. Failing which, insurance is available. Or to augment it, insurance is available. If the premium is too high, your mortgage provider will help with annual premiums. Thank you, Crystal. Thanks, everybody, for listening to me.
Thank you so much. And to reiterate, if you are unclear about what coverage you can have or what coverage you should have, start a conversation. Do not wait until it is too late. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the beginning of September. We still have just about 3 months left in our hurricane season. We thank you so much for joining us in this important conversation so that we can build together an approach to ensure that we are prepared, that we are protected, and that we can recover. This has been the High Winds Town Hall meeting by the Barbados Meteorological Services, supported by the Department of Emergency Management. My name is Crystal Austin. I'm from the Department of Public Affairs, and we so appreciate you taking the time. This video, I believe, will also remain available online on demand. If you know someone who didn't get the opportunity to watch it, look out for the video, copy the link, put it in the WhatsApp chats. Don't only forward nonsense, forward substantive things like this, so that we are all on the same page, ready and prepared to recover. Thank you so much.